Well, good evening, everyone. Happy Shabbat. We've got, believe it or not, the Larry Nater off of his deathbed. So we have Larry and Kirk, and JB is with family this evening. So, fellas, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good
don't
evening.
get me off the deathbed too fast. I'm in a lot of trouble over here until I get this
that's
surgery.
what I've heard. Yeah, you're going to need a couple of new hips.
Yeah, what a party that's going to be.
Yeah. Think how much better you can dance, Larry.
Yeah.
You want to know the truth? It's going to be a lot better than the pain. This is bone on bone, guys. I was trying to figure out what in the hell was wrong with me. I mean, I was going to therapy. I was stretching. I was having massage people come in 3 times a week. They can't fix bone on bone. I mean, that's all there is to it.
They can't. You know, the thing that they can fix, though, they can fix your problem with a hip replacement. But you know what you can't fix? There's one debility that God Himself can't fix. That's religion. It's totally debilitating. Well, religion is a curse and a plague, no, but it's a bad attitude.
Yeah.
You can overcome almost anything other than a bad attitude. I used to tell my sons that all the time. And Kirk and I, during the observations program that we recorded early this afternoon, were addressing a fellow with a really bad attitude. We're calling him Moody Jeff. And we made our way through the initial part of his letter, just by a quick background. And we're going to continue this to review the Moody Jeff letter.
Was this the fellow that I was interacting with? I'm not sure if that's true or not.
I don't know.
Don't think it was.
He wrote me a letter, and I responded to him, and he gave me the bird, literally, as a thank you for the response. So I figured, I spent a lot of time on it rather than just chalk it up to there's another religious numbskull that isn't worth talking to. I figured, I'd put his letter and my specific responses to each of the points that he raised, and hoping that it could be posted on our various sites. And the reason that we're going to cover it is that, Kirk, you had mentioned 2 shows ago that as part of the discussions that you were in, that you were getting lots of people asking, what do I do? I've got family members that are still religious. How do I address their concerns? What do I say to them? I probably get 2 letters a day from people who are covenant and are trying, feel a sense of it's not obligation, but a sense of enthusiasm, really, for sharing what it's like to be in the covenant, and when they have a concern over family and friends, and so they're sharing with family and friends, and they're getting nowhere. Now, this letter we're going to share, I was worse than nowhere. In fact, I put myself up in Yahowah class on this, not in the sense that I did well, in the sense of how poorly I did. Now, you'd say, okay, why would you put yourself in Yahowah class if you're talking about how poorly you did? Yahowah did so poorly with his audience, not his fault, mind you, and presenting the story of Yahweh as revealed in the Torah and him fulfilling the Torah, the promises, rather than just giving him the bird. What did they do to him?
They killed him.
Yeah, they nailed him too.
They didn't like him. They didn't enjoy what he had to tell them because it was in such opposition. Right. Just before you start there, I had it out with a guy too that. He started emailing with you and then began emailing with me. It's not the same fellow. I see that now. Okay. And, he ended up talking about, he sent me to some website and he wanted me to debate Yahweh as opposed to Yahowah. After I showed him how we come to Yahweh. And, if you want to take names that hold Yahweh's name in contractions like Yoab as an example, and 40 others that you appropriately point out, then you have to go with an O. You can't go with a U. It's an O. I mean, it's not Yub, it's Yoab, and so you show these things, and then you say, okay, this guy can't add 2 and 2. Forget it. And then he comes back, you still haven't answered my question. I said, well, you're asking me to read a goddamn religious site. And, they started right out with a divine name, and he commands us. And I said, they don't know Yahweh. They don't know his nature. And I said, I'm not really interested in what they have to say. I see the word command.
I think it's his site. It's the same fellow that wrote me on the name, and he wanted to explain that the proper pronunciation is derived from Paleo-Greek, and that the name was written in Paleo-Greek, and he gave Hebrew letter names for the Paleo-Greek, and said it was revealed several hundred times in Paleo-Greek. I mean, you're dealing with an absolute numbskull at that point, because of course the oldest 69 copies that have been found, the only 69 copies that predate Constantine, are written in Koine Greek and not Paleo-Greek. They're in Koine Greek. There's no Paleo-Greek, but they're written in Koine Greek, and in 100% of the 69 pre-Constantine manuscripts, Yahweh's name nor Yosha's name is ever written out once. Placeholders are used just like they were used in the Septuagint.
Right.
And the early copies of the Septuagint wrote Yahweh's name and Yosha's name in Hebrew in the middle of the Greek text, because it can't be transliterated using Greek letters. So they just wrote it in Hebrew. And after a while, they replaced the Hebrew with Greek placeholders, but it was never written out in the Septuagint either. But you just read something like this and you go, "Oh my goodness!" But then this is not the fellow whose letter we're covering today. I mean, I got double whammy this week. It's a lot of fun. I
just wanted to point out in the end, because he didn't know Yahweh's nature, he tried to turn instructions into, well, that's part of what it can mean, but it also means command, because there's punishment. He said there's punishment for not listening.
No.
And I thought, so now we're back to heaven and hell.
He doesn't cite the Torah for that. He cites one statement in Ezekiel taken out of context. Now, this particular fellow wrote me and said, you're only telling the half truth. You're not even telling the half truth. You're just so fixated on not revealing the nature of the law and not telling anybody they have to obey God. So you're not being accurate, and this is, you're just ridiculous. And so I tried to be nice to him the first time and said, listen, Torah absolutely does not mean law, and Shema absolutely does not mean obey. Torah means teaching, guidance, direction, and instruction, and Shema means to listen. But there are Hebrew words like mitzvah, for example, and misvat, which, if you take the lexicons at face value, you would be amongst the majority, the vast majority, if you assume that they had the connotations of command and
obey.
Edicts. Nothing. There is no Hebrew word for obey. But you could justify that based upon the lexicons. But I came to the conclusion that the only reason that the lexicons had command and they had dictates, for example, and statutes for these words was based solely on the idea that they had already misconveyed the nature of Torah and miscommunicated the nature of Shema, and even Shamar, where they made it keep as opposed to observe, that they just dug themselves in deeper, and that the connotation of those words and the usage of those words are much more accurately defined as terms and conditions of the covenant, the means to execute good judgment and to resolve disputes, and that those connotations are based on the root words, and they're consistent with the Yahweh. So you have that option. So this guy wrote me back, and he said, he says, I don't disagree that Shama can mean listen, but that's only half of the meaning. It also means to obey, and that Torah can mean guidance and direction, but that's only half the meaning. The other half of the meaning is law.
Yeah, that's what he tried to play with me, and then when he said, "Now, since you're only telling me half the truth, why should I listen to you?" Now, here's the stone cold truth. We don't ask anybody to listen to us.
I would say just flat out. Shama only means to listen. That's all it means. It does not mean to obey. It's not even that 1% of Shama conveys obey. Now, can you find obey? Will you find obey for Shama in the religious lexicons? Absolutely. And you'll find absolutely everything that is wrong in English translations in the Hebrew lexicons, because they were written to justify the English lexicons. So if you're going to use these tools, you have to be discriminating. If you're not, if you don't make an effort to remove the religiosity, you might as well not even go about the task of translating. But Shama means to listen. That's all it means. And Torah is based on the verb yara, which is the source from which direction, guidance, teaching, and direction flow. That's what it means. It does not mean law. It never means law. There's no aspect of the word that means law. Now, those things said, what I told this fellow is that if you want to believe that Yahweh issued a bunch of laws that you have to obey, otherwise you're going to get punished, then you better figure out a way that you can go kill people on the Shabbat for picking up sticks. You better go and find a way that you can kill everybody that has committed adultery. You better figure out a way to bring the Passover lamb into your home 4 days before Passover and then slit its throat before your children and wife. You better figure out a way to deal with all the responsibilities given to the Shafat, the judges, and to
the Lowy,
the priests. You better figure out a way to do that. You better figure out what you're supposed to do, since you don't have access to the Ark of the Covenant. And you need to figure out what are the three animals that Yahweh was describing that have never existed that you're not supposed to eat. You've got a whole lot of things that you just flat out can't do. You're not going to on Shabuah. You're not going to go out and kill a ranch worth of animals. So now what? And so I said, I can learn from every one of those illustrations. You can't do any of them. So if Yahweh wanted you to obey them as laws, then he's out of his ever-loving mind, because you'd go right to jail to do any of that. That's all I heard from him is, then...
No, that's well stated. That's the way to put it. Then he started on me, and he asked me why he should listen to me. I said, I don't suggest anybody listen to me. I appreciate it if you never email me again. Thank you.
That's what I said. That was my response to him. He was looking for a pen pal, I guess. But anyway, that was one this week, and that one because he got so belligerent and it's just like talking to a brick. Then I got Moody Jeff. Now we're going to go over Moody Jeff just because of the fact that Moody Jeff deals with something that we all face. What do you do with a person that comes to you that claims to have been questioning Christianity, that now wants to say that they're searching for Yahweh, and they say things that are wholly inappropriate? How do you respond to them? And that's the purpose of what we're going to do here, because we're all dealing with it. And keep in mind that I was a total crash and burn. This guy, his final comments to me were so crass that we're not going to even read his final statement to me. He only wrote me twice, but the second time it was so crass we can't even read it. Now,
let me throw in one more thing before we start.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead. No, but the reason that doesn't bother me, and it shouldn't bother anybody else who is listening, is that while I failed miserably, and I'm not, I don't claim to be great at it, Yosha was great at it, and he failed worse than I did. They nailed him to a pole.
Upright pole.
Yeah, ripped the skin off his back, did everything they could to degrade him and slander him and to demean him. So, we should not have high expectations here, but still we should try. I don't believe that it's our duty, our responsibility, or that it's even productive to talk to anybody who doesn't first say something that gives us an opening, or that we say something that draws somebody in that would provide an opening. But and this person wrote me, so that was my opening. I didn't go off and solicit him. It's not like I walked into his house and said, "Oh my God, what you just said is irritating." He wrote me. I responded to what he wrote.
All right.
Okay.
Well, you understand that most of these people, what we have to know right off the bat, and I know you've dealt with thousands of them, but just to throw it out there for everybody, most of the people that engage us are looking to challenge us. That's what I've found. They want to challenge us with their belief systems. There's very little that I've ever heard Barack Obama say.
Are there superior intelligence or education?
Yeah, they want to play theologian or whatever they want to play, which I have no time for.
This person was skilled in exegesis, and the other thing that he said he was skilled in was hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is his interpretations or explanations is what the word means. But rather than say that he was educated in Christian interpretations and explanations, no, he had to use the 50-cent word.
Yeah.
So they were trying to.
Well, there was
4 years with a Moody Bible Institute. So it's
that makes him a stone cold idiot then. But I have to tell you, and I just want to throw this out there.
Oh no, he's an expert. He's in Bible theology.
Yeah, and this is what we're really dealing with. And again, there's very little I've ever agreed with Barack Obama on. But he said something that I caught this week, and I thought, well, that's just perfect. He said that faith is having hope in something that we cannot know.
Yeah, that's the definition.
And I said, boy, that's beautiful. That's correct. That's right. So correct. And that's what we're dealing with.
That's what and that is stupid.
Yes, that's absolutely.
It is. While it is accurate, and it defines religion like Christianity, faith is a belief in that which you cannot know.
That's right. So, and that's what we're dealing with here from the start. So with that,
Christianity is popular, and in fact, a good friend of mine wrote me the other day. Said the reason that Christianity is so popular is Paul asks nothing of anybody. You don't have to know. You don't have to think. You don't have to understand. You don't have to engage. You don't have to do anything.
Just write a check.
You don't even have to write a check.
No, you don't have to.
No. So that is the nature of it. That's why Paul based his entire gospel on faith. Is because if you thought about what he said, if you shed your ignorance and actually studied what he said, you'd come to realize that he was irrational, that what he wrote is preposterous, that it has a 0% possibility of being true, and that the case that he made was completely and totally wrong. Every aspect of it, every word of it.
Yeah, well, once you step into reality, faith, taken from the goddess Phidias, by the way, I mean, that's what it really comes from. Faith holds no place in your life. I mean, once you step into reality is what it is.
Understanding transforms your life. Knowledge is empowering, but understanding is transformative. Once you understand, you are empowered, you're enriched, everything begins to fall into place and make sense. Your life has tremendous joy, purpose, contentment. Understanding is an extraordinarily powerful tool, but understanding is the derivative of knowing, and knowing is the antithesis of faith. And so with understanding, nothing can be thrown your way that you can't deal with With faith, the winds just change direction and your sail is flapping.
Yeah, and of course, these people, when they're coming into, and I don't know if that's been what you've seen as well, Kirk, but the people that are say they're coming to want to know the truth want to carry a lot of their faith and belief system with them, and until they can shed that, they can't.
I said to him today, I said, I think what this guy really wants to do is he's looking for somebody to tell him that he can keep his Christianity and still get to, and resolve all his problems he has. He just won't let go. That's why Yahweh said, get away from Babylon first.
Yeah.
And I
actually,
talk to you.
What I think has happened is this fellow has come to realize there's lots of aspects of Christianity that are wrong, and he hates God for it. In fact, let's just start on that line right now, that where he was as we pick up from where we left off on the observations program. Now, he had said that he's proud to have figured out on his own that we should be using God's proper name, although he, by the way, does not use it. He then says that the Trinity was the next domino to fall, and that he realized that it was a lousy concept. Okay. The first aspect of that, of knowing that God's name was important, does that have any value if you don't know and use the name?
No.
No.
Our children shout from the rooftops my name.
Right.
They love his name.
The power in Yahweh's name is using it. Is knowing it. There is no power of knowing that Yahweh's name is important and not using it.
On that note, let me throw one thing in just as part of your rebuttal here. Before we went on air, I picked up my itinerary, and in the preface, under difficulties in the Old Testament, it says the only personal name of God, now this is a Christian, the only personal name of God is that belongs to him alone was rendered either Jehovah or in the shortened form Jah or Yah, and not Yah, rather, but with a J. We preferred transliteration of JHWH, thus Jehovah, over Yahowah or Yahweh, mispronounced, because this is established English usage for Bible with Baal, names beginning with the letter J, like Jacob and Joseph. I guess it's too hard just to say Jacob.
Two people whose names didn't start with J.
No,
that's cute.
That would
How do they
so you ask yourself,
with a straight
there's no
face?
J sound to the 16th century, and he said don't change the jot and the tittle. So where does that leave you?
Actually, no J sound into the 17th century, the 1600s.
Well, I mean, before it got in use, I think it was like 1680 or something. Somebody invented it, but yeah. But you don't see it till the 4th edition or something.
1680 is
1700s. I'm sorry, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, no, 1600s, which is the 17th century.
Yes.
You're right on the time. It was in the 1600s. That just happens to be the 17th century. What that proves is what I was trying to convey to the other fellow, which is, yes, you will find under the definition of Torah in religious publications law. You will find under the definition of Shama in religious publications obey. That doesn't make it correct.
Don't make it so.
For example, these people saying the personal name of God is J-A-H and Yahowah, and they then went to justify it by other mistakes, using other mistakes to justify that mistake. That does not work. That is, that what they were doing is compounding lies. So just because somebody publishes it does not make it true.
Yeah, by the way, it's interesting. The command, by the way, the word for that is Sheol. S-H-A-apostrophe-A-L, Sheol.
Yeah.
And I can think of a few other names that share that root. I mean, really.
It's true. It's true.
But I really
mitzvah is usually rendered command or commandment in most of the religious lexicons.
Which
even
though
you do a study of mitzvah and you find that the best, most accurate, most consistent definition that is totally in harmony with Yahweh's nature and his testimony is terms and conditions of the covenant, terms and conditions of the relationship. So there's lots. That is, I would say that people ask, how do you go about translating? And I think Lisa wrote a letter the other day where she refers to herself as a bookworm, and I'm a silkworm. I love to weave out of to consume what Yahweh has and to weave it into many words. And so how do you go about doing that? And what I've said, lots of times is, okay, context is critical. And I've said lots of times you've got to go to the actionable root of the word, the verbal root of the word. I've said lots of times you have to strip the word of the diacritical marks and look at every word in Hebrew that is written with the same letters in that particular order. And that you have to do all of those things to come up with a translation. But there's something that precedes all of that is an absolute requirement for an accurate translation of Yahweh's word.
You have to know his nature.
Yes, correct. You got to know him.
Yeah.
If you don't know him, you cannot translate his testimony, because one of the very first things that you come to recognize when you know him is he's consistent.
Yeah.
If he presents himself as a father and he uses the term Lord to describe the adversary, there's a hell of a clue. At that point now, you have to be really careful about ascribing anything to him that is legalistic or commandment. If he writes the 10 statements that he etched in stone, which are called the 10 Commandments, and he wrote those such that they were in the imperative mood, which is the mood of second-person volition, you got to think it through. What does that mean? What does that mean? What that means is they're not commandments. And by the way, he uses debar to describe them. Debar means statements or words. 10 words, 10 statements.
Well, he also uses the words like, I plead with you to listen to me. Please listen to me.
And I plead with you.
I mean,
and not only do I plead with you,
that's a hell of a command.
I'm asking you under the auspices of free will. He'll write almost every significant statement that he makes relative to coming to know him, listening to what he has to say, observing the terms and conditions of his covenant. Almost every time that it's important, he will state it in a volitional mood. First, second, or third person volition.
Do this.
Yes, this is what I hope you choose.
Constantly.
Yeah, choose of your own volition.
Yeah, to do this.
To do this. So anyway, this particular fellow, his next line was, "To be honest, I was pissed at God for not making it easier to find the truth. But I knew there had to be real truth out there. I never stopped believing there was a creator. I still think that those who have struggled to find Yah in their own way should be considered for the next life in his family, because I don't think we've been given enough to get it right."
Can I address that? I know you have.
I'm almost taking my breath away.
I desperately want to say a couple things here.
Okay, please. Yeah, please.
The path is so difficult. Let me suggest a couple of things to those who are looking and may feel that way. First of all, things that came to my mind early on is Hebrew has like 5,000 or 8,000 words, so it's not nearly as confusing as English that has 680,000 words and growing. I bought a little dictionary.
How many words are in the Torah?
Not in the Torah. There in the whole Hebrew language. There was only 5,000 to 8,000 words until recently, when they started adding things like computers, and they didn't have a word for it.
Yeah, so I think that the Hebrew of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms is less than 10,000 words, right?
Oh, yes.
And
almost 700,000 now that we have in English, so that's confusing enough.
Yeah, that's one of the things, by the way, that I learned very early on, is that once you started dealing with Hebrew, you saw the same words over and over and over again. There's only a couple of places where you were constantly introduced to new words. Yahshua, Isaiah, his vocabulary is much more. You see the same words, but in almost every sentence in Yahshua, Isaiah, he will bring in a word that you've not seen used elsewhere. But for the most part, it becomes really easy to translate because the same words are used over and over and over again.
Well, to that, I got a dictionary very early on that had 500 key verbs and 500 key nouns. And it also had the Strong's number, so I could look it up in multiple lexicons. And I also had the ancient Hebrew lettering too, so I could I could look at those as well. And I found that almost nothing that I was reading in Yada Yahweh at the time that I couldn't just about get right there, even though I had the complete.
But those 1,000 words will cover probably 75% of what he had to say. Now, beyond that, you don't even have to worry about English tenses. We have past, past perfect, present, future, future perfect. We've got so many variations of tenses. How many tenses relative to time are there in Hebrew?
You have none. Well, they're all open.
None.
Open. Yeah.
None. There are no tenses.
Either or. I mean, go forever.
Right.
It's in the past, present, future. And you do have, of course, things that are as a done deal or is still ongoing. So in the perfect and imperfect. So that helps.
So you have ongoing or completed action, and the completed action is not necessarily completed in the past. It could be completed in the present or in the future, but it's not ongoing. The ongoing and completed is important for things like, for example, the 10 statements that Yahweh etched in stone. 9 of the 10 are volitional. We talked about that before. But all of them were written in the imperfect. What the imperfect says is don't make a habit of killing. Don't continue to commit adultery. It doesn't say, don't ever commit adultery. That would be the perfect. Don't ever kill. That would be the perfect. No, it's in the imperfect. Don't make a habit of these things. Don't continually do it. Don't lie as a ongoing practice. So because they're written in the imperfect, it means the moment you stop doing them. I used to be a Christian. I used to promote Christian and teach Christian evangelism. Those were really wrong things to be doing. I called God Jesus. I used the term Lord. Those are all horrible things to have done. But the moment I stopped doing them, I was no longer in conflict with any of Yah's instructions in that regard, because he wrote them in the imperfect. So it gives us enormous flexibility and leeway.
Now let me add one last thing in that regards about how difficult it's not. If you took a little time and looked at, there's 22 letters, of course, and if you looked at them in the ancient Hebrew in a pictograph, which is where they started, then what you would find is not only are they easy to read, they look like what they mean, and they all have meaning. So it reinforces that. Not only does the grammar reinforce it, so you add that in, and how much easier can you make other than just say, here.
Right. Correct.
This is not that hard, but what you don't have is the want to. You got to have the want to.
And the want to is attitudinal.
Attitude,
that's why I began the program by saying that you can fix a lot of things, you can't fix attitude. One of the things I was trying to think of, Yahweh developed a relationship with Adam. He developed one with Noah. He developed one with Abraham. He developed one with Yishak, with Jacob. And maybe it's not fair on those two because they were just in the genealogy. But then he developed one with Moshe. He developed one with Dode, and developed one with his prophets. He developed one with Shamuel, for example.
Indeed.
What was it? What was the common denominator? Is there a common denominator of the folks like Dode and Moshe and Abraham that caused God to introduce himself to them? And that caused God to want to develop a relationship with them. Because one of the things you quickly figure out in this whole deal is that Yahweh makes an introduction. He may not tell you his name initially, but Yahweh actually reaches out to those that he wants to form a relationship with, and it's up to you to respond. And so what is, I looked at myself. I look at Larry. I look at Kirk. I mean, we are three very different dudes.
Indeed.
And we have very different proclivities, attitudes, approaches. Forget the second word. We have very different proclivities and approaches. Mm-hmm. Our attitudes are all the same.
Yes.
I do not have Dode's intelligence or his musical acumen, but I have his attitude. Mm-hmm. I don't have Moshe's patience, but I have his attitude. Mm-hmm. I don't have Noach's woodworking skills, but I have his attitude. I don't have your artistic ability, but we have the same attitude.
Sure.
I don't have Larry's voice or just fearless nature, but I have his attitude. I think that Yahowah chooses people he wants to spend time with because of their attitude. If you want to look at Dode, what was the principal differentiating quality between Dode and the rest of the world at that time?
He cared to know.
His attitude.
Yeah.
Yahowah said, hey, there's an uncircumcised Philistine out there that's mocking me and the family, and nobody can deal with him. He's got everybody shaking in their boots.
Yeah.
Dode said, okay, pick out a stone and take the sling. I'll go get him.
Remember, this is a guy who killed a lion. He had plenty of courage. He wasn't worried about it.
Well, the truth and the attitude is, have you ever heard a delusional religious person tell you they're waiting for God's answer?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all the time.
My purpose in life is I'm waiting for him to tell me my purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, when
everything,
right.
all the above. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
that's why
his words
I would
are written.
Never ask God for my purpose in life. I know what my purpose in life is. And by the way, my purpose in life is exactly the same as your purpose in life. Be part of his family. Share what we have come to know about his family. That's our purpose in life. It's not hard.
No.
God tells you
he
all
don't
the time
really care
what
you do for a living.
Right.
That's exactly right.
I feel uncomfortable not thanking God for the provisions he gives me. I said, he didn't give you the provisions. The food on your table is because you worked, you earned a living, you paid for the food, and then you prepared it. It didn't come from God.
Well, the purpose in life is spelled out right there to Adam, right there in the garden, for the purposes of companionship and association, and it's a matter of free will if we decide to listen. So when people tell me that they're waiting for God's answer, what they need to do is go look at his words,
Hey, do you ever find any place where Adam said, "Hey, God, I'm really pissed that you didn't make it easier to find the truth"? Did you find any place where David said, I'm really pissed at God because he's made it so hard for me to find the truth? Did you hear Moshe say, God, you haven't provided enough information. I think you need to change the means for which you're going to engage people in your family. This Moed Mikre thing is never going to work because you haven't provided enough information. It ain't going to fly.
Hey,
I think you need to grade on the curve here.
Attitude.
Yeah.
Since we're going to throw around a whole lot of attitude, this guy that's really angry, Mr. Jeff, and at Yahowah because he didn't make it easier, I have some news for him. That gray matter between your ears, Yahowah created that. And the legs that he gave you to walk your butt to the library to maybe get about 30 books I could recommend, he gave you those too. He created that.
Yeah, and he gave you
So what is this guy angry about? That he had to do a little work?
I'm pissed at God for not making it easier to find the truth. Now, I'm going to tell you, all fairness, there was a brief moment in time.
Sounds like a slacker to me.
I would never say I was pissed at God, but I was disappointed. I don't know what even the right word is, but I was frustrated. How about that? I was frustrated with God. When the moment that
word
that
is
I came
slacker. Somebody who doesn't like
the moment I came to realize
of the ground.
that I had been misled in Christianity, and that the Shabbat still stood and it meant something, and Yahweh's name was there and it meant something, and that the seven Mikre all represented an essential aspect of how to go from this world to Yahweh's home, and that there were 5 terms and conditions of the covenant. And when I started realizing things that I don't think anyone has, I can't say ever, I have never read, I have never heard of anyone coming to realize any one of those things. And so
really didn't
here
put
it was.
It down in English.
Yeah, certainly if they did, they didn't write it in English.
Didn't you?
So I did. I had to work for it, and I had to make so many connections, and to be able to come to those conclusions. And I was saying, God, why didn't you just make it easier? I mean, why didn't you say Pesach is about eternal life? And I've combined it with matzah because I don't want anybody availing themselves of eternal life while not at the same time also dealing with the benefits of matzah, which perfect your soul. Because if you Pesach and you don't matzah, then you're going to spend eternity in Sheol. Why didn't you just say that? Why didn't you just say that after Pesach, eternal life, and matzah, perfection, I'm going to adopt you, and that Bikurim is about adopting you into my family, and that Shabuah, the promise, why didn't you just call it the promise of the Shabbat, the promise of 7, and say its purpose is to enrich and empower my children? And, I said, why didn't you just make it clear? And
here's a better question.
So I was frustrated for a while.
Question. The question is, if he'd have just told you, would it be as beautiful?
No. And then, after a while, and this was a fairly short-lived frustration.
I don't think Yahweh really likes
After a while, I
slackers.
began to think, wait a minute, this is really fun. How much more can I figure out? It's all there. It's all straightforward. None of it is hidden. It all weaves together as a consistent tapestry. It's all there for me to find. And then all of a sudden it said, rather than if he had simply said, here's the 3 spiritual laws. Here's the plan.
Okay,
we would have all stopped right there, and we would have forestalled the most amazing experience you can have in life. And then it became...
it's your bubby's Torah.
Right. Now, then I went through
and it ain't the guy down the street
another phase, and the other phase...
It's not his biblos.
No, and then the next phase I went through is that, all right, first of all, it just dawned on me as I was doing this, who in the world am I to be frustrated at God for the way that he chose to communicate with us? Isn't that really stupid? I said, wait a minute.
Well, he
chose this for a reason. There must be a reason. Let me figure out what the reason is, because it's not productive to be pissed at God. That's a really bad life choice. And so
the Torah
I began to think,
it wouldn't be much of a
reason?
teacher if he did it the other way.
Yeah, it weeds out slackers. I don't think Yahweh really cares for people that are disinterested.
Right. What did Noah have to do to weather the storm?
He had to build a boat.
He had to build a boat.
You think that was easy?
Boat.
What
he had to go get a whole lot of animals.
What did Moshe have to do to reveal the Torah? Can you imagine?
He had
the
to walk a long way.
Oh, not only walk a long way, think about writing all that down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It didn't make it easy. He's upset, huh?
Still a writer's
Yahweh
when
didn't make it easy. He never made it easy, even on his own children. Do you know what I had to do to figure out his name? I had to dig and search and cry out.
I had written 2,000 pages before I figured out how to pronounce his name.
Terry dug up 2 books the other night that we had in our files, and we filed them all away, and on the names of God, and not one time did it have Yahweh in any of them. Honest, not one time. At least in Strong's, I can look up the number 3068 and it says Yahweh.
Or they want you to look at something else out there to come up with a name or
Jehovah this and does this and this name and that name.
It just dawned on me one day.
I have a name,
Right. And when it dawned on me, when I started writing Torah is Towrah, because it's TWRH in Hebrew.
Yeah.
And I said, uh-oh. What does Torah mean? It means to teach. Well, wouldn't one of the things that Yahweh want to teach is how to pronounce his name? Torah means guidance. Wouldn't he want to guide us as to how to pronounce his name? Well, there's only one letter in his name. There's only one letter that could be even questioned. And here in Torah, there were 2 of the 3 letters in Yahweh's name are right there in Torah.
Yeah. Well, and then the Wah and the Hey end up being a Torah, like Yahowah.
Right.
And yeah, it's all right there. It's
if
you can say Torah, you can say Yahowah for sure.
Which also means light in the middle of it.
Of course.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Yahweh says Torah is light. So we're gonna go by the fact that he intended us to come to that conclusion, even though there's
yeah. You know what? You can't share your name 7,000 times while you're trying to hide it. I mean,
well,
let's get real.
It also finally dawned on me is that talking about things not being hard, being really easy, is that, Kirk, how many letters are there in the Hebrew alphabet?
22.
Okay. How many of those are consonants?
Four.
All but
nope.
5.
I guess 5. You'd have to say
all
the
but 5 were vowels. And the way we know that, and of course the scholars would say no, they would say that Hebrew is all consonants, and yet what they will tell you is that the ain and the alf are unpronounceable, and they will and that every time they transliterate the sound of the yod, the hey, and the wah, they pronounce them as like we would pronounce the Y in English, as a U or W or O and English for the W. As a matter of fact, there are probably 1,000 English words that still derive their sound from the original pronunciation of the Hebrew Wah, like oath, like owl, like own. There are 1,000 English words like that. Yes, and so it quickly became obvious that the aleph is pronounced just like the first letter of the English alphabet. It is an alphabet after all, and that the ain was pronounced like the English e or sometimes I, and so you realize, wait a minute, if I look at the way these words are transliterated in Hebrew, particularly in the most common words, the words that you know have retained their pronunciation over time. Shalom. The O is from Awah. Eloah for Elohim. It's the
Yobel.
O sound is from the Wah. Yobel. You have so many of these words that the pronunciation is known that all you have to do is realize, wait a minute, I've only got 5,000 to 10,000 words here, and they're all written to be pronounced with the same 22 letters. Why is Yahowah any different than the other 5,000 to 10,000 words? If we can pronounce all the rest of them, how could we not be able to pronounce this one name that is written using these same letters?
Because the rabbi said so.
Oh God! And then all you had to do at that point is, okay, what is the basis of Yahweh's name? Did he tell us what the basis of his name was? Did he tell us how to pronounce his name the first time he stated it?
Absolutely.
Haya. Haya. Hey, yod, hey. Haya.
Tough.
Okay, well, that takes care of 3 of the 4 letters in his name, the yod and the hey. I say 3 because the hey is repeated. Okay, now all I have to do is figure out how to pronounce the wah, and I'm home free. And so, all you have to do is look, there it is in Torah. There it is in Shalom, the 2 most common Hebrew words. You know what the 3rd most common Hebrew word is? No one doubts the pronunciation of? Goy and Goyim for Gentile and Gentiles.
Yeah, they're going.
Right. And so it became, at that point, and then that legacy into English, but then the clincher was, there are 30 Hebrew names that everybody acknowledges are based on Yah or Yahowah, and then something else like Yoel, Yah was God, that convey the Yah-O sound even to this day.
Yes.
Even look at Joshua from the O in the middle, the Wah. Creates the O sound. And so it became so easy. You didn't have to look outside of the Torah to know how to pronounce his name.
Well, I mean, look at Yahweh, look at Yoab, look at Yoach. I mean,
so
look at Yoel.
It wasn't hard. It was so
look
easy
at Yob.
to do.
It's not Yub. It's not Job.
Right, Job.
They call him Job, but it was written Job.
Right.
You know,
so,
Yahowah, Bayeth. And so, you know, when you look at those things, they're clearly there. But, you know, there's something else that you have to add in here. One, you're doing some general thinking, some critical thinking. Although it might not have been tough, it was still critical thinking.
Tough.
And the hardest part, the bridge that you have to cross, is that you're told all your life no one's to say his name because the rabbis said that.
Right.
Tell me I'm wrong here.
Okay. Correct.
And so you're so worried that you're going to mispronounce the word. I can tell you
or that no one knows how to pronounce it is the other thing you're told. Or you're told that
right.
Hebrew only had consonants and there's no vowels, so it can't be pronounced. And yet you read the text, and you read where it says, listen to it. Yahweh is constantly telling us to listen to it. You can't listen to it unless it's read. You can't read it unless you're pronouncing it.
And
Kara means to read and recite.
Have vowels to pronounce anything.
And Yahweh constantly says, listen to the sound of my voice. Well, the only way you can listen to the sound of his voice is to read his words out loud.
Hear it. Right. You know, but here's the thing. There's a fear factor. And the fear factor, and believe me, I remember going back in, 14 years ago or whatever it was, I didn't want to mispronounce Yahweh's name. But, I can tell you for sure, and you two can both testify to this, nowhere in his words does he say, if you happen to mispronounce my word, you're in a lot of trouble. There's a death sentence. What he says is hiding my name. Is
unforgivable. It's unforgivable.
Yeah,
negating
totally
the value of my name is
different.
unforgivable. It's the third statement in stone. Can you imagine, introducing his name to Moshe, and after telling him, Ihaya Asher Ihaya, I am who I am, that he would say, you can tell the children of Israel that my name is Yahweh. That is the only name that I ever wish to be known by. That he's, I just said it. Shouldn't have said it. I'm going to have to go kill myself now.
And I'll say it 6,999 more times.
Oh, yes, exactly. I'm going to kill myself lots of times. Lots of resurrections here. Oh, woe is me.
I feel all those guys you got named after him, too.
No, it's just, but of course to us it's laughable. But that when people go into it, that they're caught up into all this minutia that they've heard.
So what I
God
will
will condemn you for mispronouncing
Yahweh
his name
work.
or something.
Yahweh likes work.
Yeah, right, which is what Lisa was saying.
He wants us to engage in the relationship. He wants us to be observant, which is to closely examine and carefully consider. He wants us to be in, which means to make connections to understand. He wants us to act upon the terms and conditions of his covenant. He wants to have a relationship with people who enjoy engaging, who want to observe, who want to think, who want to act, who want to respond. And he doesn't want to have a relationship with someone who says, "Now, if it's not easy, I ain't going there." I mean, why should entrance into eternal life, to go from all of the limitations of 3.5 dimensions to 7 dimensions, why should that be easy? Man, has all sorts of easy ways for you to capitulate, all sorts of easy ways for you to believe. It takes nothing to believe. And if God made the entrance to heaven such that it doesn't matter what you knew, just so long as you made an effort, you get in, wouldn't eternity in heaven be just like the hellish conditions we've created here on earth? How would it be any different? Would I have to run into
Well, they would be more powerful worse because they'd be powerful.
Would I have to listen to somebody saying, to be honest, I'm angry with God? Would I have to listen to somebody saying, God didn't give us enough information to know the truth? I don't want to be exposed to that.
When you start setting down and breaking down the Torah, I know you guys know this, and you start saying, and this guy went over here to this town, and then you look at that town, you study that town, and then you find out that town, this is a guy that's done all kinds of bad things, right? And you find out this town is they're worshiping Moloch, or they're worshiping some female deity, and they're killing their children, And by the way, the name of this town is based on some goddess. And you sit there and you go, my God. You know, as you start looking, as you're going through it, it's everywhere in the world. It's his name. Satan and his guises are everywhere.
Everywhere. And what you find is that rather than being difficult, it's actually easy. But that what has to happen to go from difficult to easy, this is now going from knowing the truth, because knowing the truth, well, that's valuable. Like, for example, Hasatan knows that Yahweh's name is Yahweh. Hasatan knows that there are 5 terms and conditions of the covenant. You know, knowing's valuable, but knowing the truth only takes you so far. Understanding the truth so that you can respond is the key. Now, what I found is that once I understood Yahweh's nature and understood that his entire purpose is to provide guidance that we can use to understand the terms and conditions of the covenant and its benefits so that we choose to get to know Yahweh, come to like him and respect him, come to agree with those terms and conditions of his covenant and accept them so that he can make us immortal, perfect, adopt us into his family, enrich us, and empower us. That's the entire story. There is nothing more to the story. Once you
it's told over and over and over and over again.
Right.
Over and over again in so many ways.
10,000 different ways, the exact same story is told and reinforced. And it's not just that he tells the story of how we can come to know him, respect him, and engage in a relationship with him, what he's like, what eternity is going to be like, what he's going to do for us. He also constantly tells us the consequence of doing something stupid, the consequence of rejecting him, the consequence of false gods, the consequence of politics, the consequence of militarism, the consequence of religious liars. He's constantly reinforcing that, yes, this is the benefit, but you need to know that man is out there, political man, religious man, military man, is out there to take advantage of you. And I'm really angry at them for doing so. And that the whole book of Yirmiyah is based on, I am just livid at...
there's a ruach. There's a ruach over everything. You understand what I'm saying? I mean,
there is.
And I was trying to really wrap my head around how that works. And, there really is a spiritual war. There's a spiritual war. Yahweh says there is. And you sit there and you think, well, how does that really work? And then I started thinking about the ways that it worked. And one of the ways, now imagine people are going to go out on the mall in D.C., right? And they're going to watch a swearing-in process, and they're going to be standing there in front of this obelisk where Amun-Ra lives. And what ruach is going to be over them? What's going to be the ruach of patriotism, isn't it?
The spirit of Satan, the Lord.
And they're going to swim in it. They're going to swim in it.
Can I? Again, understanding is important. I want to be really careful here. I'm going to give you my take on what you just said, because I only agree with what you just said to a point. Yes, there is a spiritual battle. Yahweh is not fighting in that battle. Fighting in the battle. The Ruach Kodesh is not fighting in the battle. The Ruach Kodesh serves to protect her children, the covenant's children, serves to enlighten the covenant's children. But the Malach and the Ruach Kodesh are not out there engaged in spiritual warfare against Satan.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. When I say spiritual battle, it's over man's spirit, is what it is. I mean, it's not Ruach fighting whatever.
But again, Satan is in. You ever watched the movie with Pacino called Devil's Advocate?
Yeah, I've seen it. I saw
movie,
it when it first
it says, God's an absentee landlord. I'm in the trenches. I'm a believer in man. I've been fighting with man the whole way. Hasatan, that movie, by the way, is just one of the great movies of all time. But Hasatan,
they filmed the court scene here in Jacksonville, actually.
Hasatan is battling for human souls. Yahweh's not. It's not Yahweh's goal to save everybody. Yahweh will reach out to and introduce himself to people he wants to be part of his family, and then we have the opportunity to get to know him and to accept him and to learn about him and to be part of the covenant or not. But at no time in that process is the set-apart spirit battling Satan for our souls.
No,
right. That's another mythology that you find in religion. It's
right. There's
not
the angel and the devil on each shoulder trying to encourage you to do something good or bad. Satan.
I got a note about that where no, Johnny doesn't have a good angel and the Satan on one side pulling them each way. That's not really how it's working. You got to walk out of Babylon because you've got the good sense to do it.
Right.
I mean, that's
the really
the reality
important because
of it.
this guy is going to talk, about other things, and it is essential. I mean, I don't think there are many things that are as essential to understanding about Yahweh other than the concept of set apart. Now, why would I go from saying that Yahweh is not engaged in the spiritual battle for souls and to the concept of set apart? And the reason is
because he sets us apart.
Shamayim, the spiritual realm, is set apart. Yahweh says he is set apart. Yahweh's name is set apart. The Shabbat is set apart. The Torah is set apart. The covenant is set apart. Yisrael is set apart. Everything that is important to Yahweh, his spirit is set apart. It's called the Ruach Kodesh, set apart spirit. Yosha is Kodesh, the most set apart. What does that mean? What that means is that Yahweh is not engaged in the air that we breathe. He's not part of the rock. He's not omnipresent. He's not in the church. He's not in the mosque. He is set apart from those things. And if we want to be with him, we have to be set apart from those things. That means that his spirit is not here engaged in spiritual warfare. She is set apart from those things. If we want to be with Yahweh, we have to set ourselves apart from. That's why the first condition of the covenant is to walk away. Walk away from country, from Babylon.
Yeah, that's walk away and of your own volition, by the way.
Of your own volition, walk away. And the walk away is a separation. And so Yahweh is not engaged in spiritual battle. Yahweh is set apart from those things. And if we want to be part of the covenant, which is set apart, we have to examine the Torah, which is set apart, and set ourselves apart from the religions and the politics and the patriotism and the militarism and the babble of humankind to be part of Yahweh's family. So it's really important to know who he is. So I'm going to read this statement again by this fellow because every bit of it is just reeks with bad attitude. And to be honest, I was pissed at God for not making it easier to find the truth. But I knew there had to be truth out there. Out there where? No, there is truth not out there. There's truth in there.
Yeah, in the Torah.
I never stopped believing that there was a creator. Who cares? I mean, that's irrelevant.
Yeah, they all believe something. Yeah, go ahead.
But not only is belief irrelevant, but believing there was a creator is irrelevant. What's relevant is that Yahweh proves that he is God, proves that he authored the Torah, proves that he is the father of the covenant, proves that he can fulfill his promises relative to the covenant. That's what's meaningful.
Speaking of relative, he even proves relativity. So,
correct.
Yeah, I know I'm correct.
It's
astounding stuff.
That those who have struggled, I think that those who have struggled to find Yah in their own way should be considered for the next life in his family because enough to get it right.
But you know what I think at this point? I want to throw this in there. I think he ought to establish his own universe where he can establish his own set of laws and rules.
Right.
I mean, that's what I think.
What he's saying is that God didn't give us enough information, that Yah made it hard, that therefore Yah was an ineffective communicator, and so he needs to now come up with it. And anybody like me that made an effort, whatever way that we chose to make an effort, we need to be considered for the afterlife. Now, why would God want to spend eternity with someone who says, you're such a shitty communicator, I'm pissed at you, you didn't give us enough information
he wouldn't.
to get it right.
He wouldn't. Is this a rhetorical question? I mean, come on, man. Come on. I mean, you want to know, you talk about communication, and we've covered this before. What is communication? What is communication? When did you become wealthy, Craig? It's when you started listening instead of talking.
Correct.
Right?
You know, my communication
60% of a conversation
is 99.99999% listening to him.
Right. Yeah,
right.
And when it comes to Yahweh, we're better off doing the 9999 thing instead of talking in the air to him about things we want, which has now been turned into what we call religious prayer services. It's just ridiculous.
And I don't even ask him what he wants. I don't ask him what he wants. He told me what he wants. And I don't ask him for what I want, because he knows what we need to be effective. And
he knows what you need before you ask for it, because he says so.
More important than that, he's given us the answers to almost everything. If I gave you a map, Larry, that says this map is the map to two perfect hips. And all you got to do is follow this map down the street, and there's two perfect hips waiting for you. And then
you better hope I've got a wheelchair.
And a week later, you come to me and say, I'm really pissed off. I asked you to help me with the hips. How am I supposed to resolve my hip problem? Now, if you said that after I'd given you the map to the perfect hips, I'd say, what in the world is wrong with you?
I'd be an idiot.
I'd be an idiot. Yahweh gave us the Torah. He says, here's where to find me. Here is who I am. Here's what I'm offering. Here's what I expect from you, and here's what I'm going to do on your behalf. And then you say, oh, God, how do I find you?
I'm right there, man. I'm right with you. I mean, this guy's an outrageous boob. I mean, he just wants to create his own universe with his own set of rules.
And he wants God to accept him on his terms. What he doesn't realize is he's become his own God.
Of course. That's what I'm saying.
He's establishing his own rules. Now, what did God say about whether or not he has given us enough to give it right? Let me read this from Dode. Now, David is an extraordinary individual. Dode is the person that Yahweh said, there's not a lot of people that Yahweh said this about, but Dode says, he's right. So if Dode says, Sadak, Dode, Haya, Sadak, Dode is right. Then
period.
I think we can trust what Dode said right here. Yahweh said, Dode is right. Yahweh's Torah, his teaching, guidance, instruction, and direction, is tamim, complete and entirely perfect, turning, restoring, and transforming shub, the soul, the nefesh. Yahweh's everlasting testimony, iduth, is trustworthy and reliable, aman, making understanding, hakam, simple for the open-minded. You know what I figured out, Larry, is that Kirk? No, and when I figured out, by the way, Yahweh's view as to whether he gave us enough information and Moody Jeff's are 180% opposite. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Right.
Now,
that's correct. Yeah, that's right.
So I got a choice. I can believe Jeff's and side with him. Yeah, man, he's an inadequate communicator, or I can go with Yahweh. I'm going to choose Yahweh here. Mm-hmm. But you know what I found is that once I was and this my good friend Dode down under in Kiwi land, probably listening tonight.
We wouldn't be talking about Mr. Crawford, would we?
Yeah, we are. We're talking about Mr. Crawford,
okay.
One of my favorite people in the world.
This guy.
Mr. Crawford I owe more to Mr. Crawford than anybody else as it relates to finally having my eyes open, my mind open, so that it all fell into place, became easy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Until he told me, you really need to look into this Paul thing. There's something rotten in Denmark here. And, I wrote the 600-page book on Shaul and then a 1,200-page minor edit of it. And
as only you can
then,
do.
Observations.
Don't get him started. Don't get him started, Kirk.
About it. And once the idea of a renewed covenant and a New Testament and Pauline Christianity was completely scrubbed from my mind and from my eyes, it was just easy. At that point, genuinely easy.
Yeah, once you get rid of he's just juxtaposed to Yahweh, period, in Yahweh's teaching. I mean, that's all there is to it. And I mean, there's nothing more to it than that. And there's 100 ways to see it now. We know that. Yeah. I mean, Yahweh says it before he was born.
I replied to this fellow. A decade ago, I was briefly frustrated with God for making the truth somewhat difficult to find. Now I'm in complete accord with him, realizing that he could not have made it any more forthright. God provided a summary. Had God provided a summary, a simple answer, few, if any, would go beyond that and therefore never grow. To cease growing is to die. Even God must grow to live. It is the very basis of what it means to be infinite. Yahweh is a clear and consistent communicator. His Torah is his teaching and his guidance. It's our religious indoctrination which has confused humankind and given and hidden his truth. It's not his testimony that we should be angry at. The fact is, according to Yahweh, we have all been given everything we need to give it right. Most either ignore it, reject it, or despise what he conveyed. Now, in the case of
which goes back to communication. It's not just calling him a poor communicator. It's if you want to call the creator of the universe a poor communicator, okay, the guy that created DNA, which is the most advanced communication I can imagine, but I'm telling you, it's our inability to communicate, which means to listen. I'm going to stop right there, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
It's our inability to listen.
And just say, this fellow wrote, I'm inclined to believe that Paul is bogus. Inclined to believe that Paul is bogus. But I don't know if I can use all of the evidence you do as proof. Now,
okay.
Do you think, have you ever heard me say I'm inclined to believe that Paul is bogus?
Oh, no, you've called him a scumbag, I believe.
I know for a fact
Yahweh describes him, calls him out by name before he was born, and it says, and in the end, he's going to be having you stand before a piece of wood with this shiny God on it that has no spirit in it, saying this leads to resurrection. Yeah. Wow. I mean, you could write entire libraries and not come up with a better description of what Yahweh called the plague of death.
I responded and said, if you were concerned that I played too strong a case against Paul, I'd encourage you to read Questioning Paul and then Observations. Or I can send it to you for free, the attachments. I barely scratched the surface on Paul. Turns out Yahweh had more to say about Paul and his religion than anyone else in human history. He hates him and calls him the plague of death. And if Christians only knew that while Yahweh had a lot to say about Islam and nothing to say about Muhammad, but a lot to say about Islam, because the Islamic religion is a religion of submission. It's very much like many of the oppressive religions that were jihadi, warrior-based, where the ruler would give people no reason to live, only a reason to die, and where the gods were modeled after the Lord Satan. Christianity was built right on top of the truth. Christianity created a caricature of Yahusha. It deliberately annulled the Torah. And so Yahweh really hates it. And so he spends more time denouncing Christianity and Paul than anyone in human history. Now, then this fellow wrote, you say some alarming things that you really don't back up. Now, by the way, why would you write somebody something like that? If you didn't want to get their goal, why would you say that? I mean,
because he hasn't read it. If you
weren't an a-hole, wouldn't you phrase it in a little more delicate way? But anyway, he says it.
First of all, he hasn't read it. It's all backed up.
I mean, when
you make a statement,
where can I find the research backing up these claims or whatever?
Of course. You made some claims that I don't know
I have difficulty with. How do I research that?
Come to those conclusions. Yeah, where should I look to find that? So he says,
Is this in Questioning Paul he's talking about?
Yeah, I've had to start making notes so I can try to look up things later. Today on Shattering Myths Archive. Now, by the way, it's an archive. Why would it be today? There is no today in Shattering Myths Archive. You made a comment that seemed like you were putting words in Yah's mouth, speaking for him, as you might say. And said, well, this is my response, addressing your initial criticism. I very seldom write something that I don't back up. I very seldom write anything that isn't derived from Yahweh's word. However, the radio programs are different. Most who listen have read or are reading Yada Yahweh, Introduction to God, Questioning Paul, Observations, and Prophet of Doom. So they are aware of the basis for these statements. In other words, you ought to be reading. Then he wrote, you said that none of this would be easy concerning the study of what YHWH wants for us, but that he wants it that way. You continued that he wouldn't want anyone around him who hadn't put in a substantial effort to get to know him. Is this pure speculation on your part? It seems like it. Now, once again, that is, if you're writing somebody that doesn't know you out of the blue, that's offered all of these programs and books, and you want them to respond and to respond in a nice, uplifting, positive way, why would you write them in that tone?
Well, didn't he just say you're having trouble finding the way?
I mean, this guy's as angry at me as he is at God.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things.
Well, you know why that is in his mind. He's equating you with somebody who has the knowledge of Yahweh. That's why.
And and
he's angry.
One of the things that I learned really early on, and I'm actually not bothered at all by this sort of thing. I am in the sense of it pisses me off when somebody demeans Yahweh's testimony.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is I love Yahweh. We're friends. He's my father. I love his covenant. I love his covenant family. When people say derogatory things about Yahweh, I am bothered by that. I'm not bothered by somebody saying a derogatory thing about me. I'm not bothered by being demeaned. As a matter of fact, if I'm going to be demeaned, that's what I realized when I started this whole process with Yada Yah and then the radio program. If I'm going to be demeaned, I don't want to be demeaned for some business that I'm running. I'd like to be demeaned for representing Yahweh. I know I'm going to be demeaned for that, but what better thing to be demeaned for?
Well, it's perfect.
It pisses me off as you're my friend, that somebody who won't listen and wastes so much of your time and energy and gets you all riled up, and we found a use for this, I understand.
Yeah.
As my friend, I'd like to punch him in the nose. At least, if he's insulting. Anybody said nasty, rude mouth.
Yeah, but
you want to know something, though?
Yeah. I'm not riled
over
up,
the years
because of what he said about me. I'm only riled up because of what
because
he wrote about
Yahweh. I mean, you spent thousands of hours. You spent 15 years putting this out so anyone could have it free and considerable amount of money, and God knows how much time. And instead of appreciating or at least reading some of the book to decide whether you want to pursue it or not, to write a letter like this.
Right.
I mean, the first response would be, let's shut up and go listen, go read, and then let's talk.
Right, it's the one that follows that's the bad one, the nasty one. So, this is how I reply.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
And yet you yourself acknowledge that getting to know Yahweh takes a considerable amount of time. In your case, a lifetime without success, he wrote. I have sought YHWH my entire adult life, and even some before that. Therefore, by your own admission, it is not easy when compared to other endeavors. In fact, you even stated that you are angry with God for making it difficult. You wrote, and to be honest, I was pissed at God for not making it easier to find the truth. So let's begin there now that you have affirmed my premise. My premise was that it is difficult, that it takes effort. So he's confirmed my premise. So let's, now that you've confirmed my premise, that isn't a matter of speculation. Now that brings us to my conclusion. it's not easy by design. That's the way Yahweh wants it. Now, recognizing that it isn't easy and that there are no shortcuts, we must ask ourselves, did God make it difficult on purpose? Or is the fact that it appears to be difficult a failure on God's part to make it easier? Which is what his letter applies. Or also, has man altered and occluded what God actually communicated, thereby making something that was straightforward difficult to see and comprehend?
Now that's the truth.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Is God's word inadequate and ineffective? Did religious institutions edit God's word so that it now appears inadequate and ineffective? Or is God's word adequate and effective, but also challenging? And if so, is that by design? Now, if we acknowledge that Yahweh created the universe and then conceived life, then we should give him credit for being able are capable of doing whatever he wants. Further, if he proved through prophecy, accurate depictions of history from creation to recreation, that he authored the Torah, Nabi, prophets, and Mizmor, writings, Psalms, then he claimed that his Torah was complete, lacking nothing, fully capable of restoring souls. It is therefore his word as he intended it to be. And yet there isn't any fast way to come to know Yahweh or understand what he is offering. He did not provide a summation, a way of figuring it out with very little effort. That is a fact. Is it on purpose? If so, what is that purpose? Making matters more challenging still, by reading an English translation, there simply isn't any way to quickly assess how we can go about availing ourselves of his covenant, as they are too errantly and inadequately translated. But this isn't God's fault, it's man's fault. The deliberate attempt by religious leaders to make it difficult to know Yahweh, and God had to allow it because of free will. So if you want to blame someone for making it especially difficult to know God and understand what he's offering, blame the goddamn religions of Christianity and Judaism. Don't go and pretend like you're some kind of individual that's smarter than God and say, he didn't give us enough information to get it right, therefore he needs to come up with a way of saving anyone who tried.
Why didn't he just like his daddy instead? I mean, why ain't he taking this out on his daddy if he understands all this?
Yeah.
He's a preacher, for God's sake.
Yeah. Equally problematic. Those who have been corrupted by religion, when confronted by the truth, typically reject what Yahweh inspired because they like what Paul wrote better. They trust their church or country more than God.
It's a mouthful there.
Since Yahweh is a brilliant communicator and has the ability to do most anything, we should be asking ourselves why he made it difficult for a religious person to know him. He obviously wrote it this way for a reason, telling us not to add or subtract anything from his Torah. And he was fully aware that the religious and political institutions would remove his name and deliberately and recklessly edit his testimony. That is simple logic based on the facts as they are presented to us. When we seek to understand why this is so in the context of everything Yahweh has shared with us, the reason is obvious. Yahweh routinely states that he hates religion and that he does not want anyone who is religious to be part of his family, to live in his home, or to ruin eternity for the rest of us. It's really as simple as all of that. Guys, since God hates religion and he realized that it's corrupting and ruinous and untrue and just overly stupid and completely satanic, then it is his decision, and he's right in making it, that no one who is religious should enter heaven. That being the case, he has to create a way to preclude that from happening. And you know what the way is? If you're religious, you aren't going to understand anything that he has to tell you.
Yeah.
That's why it's hard.
Yeah, well, you'll never step outside that box. I mean, religion turned me off. At some point, it turned you off. At some point, it turned all of us off.
Eventually,
and so it's like my dad who died an atheist. He couldn't separate the creator of all things from religion.
Correct.
And because of his inability to do that, and because he saw religion as a sick joke, which it is.
Right. It is.
He decided to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah,
now, Yahowah is not a religious deity.
He
says he's not.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the
it's
problem.
It's not just the atheist that realizes that sees God defined by religion, and now the atheist recognizes that
the religious
is a
too.
sick joke. But the fact of the matter is that the religious also define God by their religion. Muslims do, Buddhists do, and Christians do. They define God by their religion, as do Jews.
Which is by their belief.
Correct.
By their belief. And you said something earlier. You were talking about Devil's Advocate, the Pacino film. And that's right. That's right. That Pacino played a very slick demonic character, didn't he?
Right.
He was there to help you. He was there. Don't touch. What do you mean? Come on, this is all BS. I mean, that was a very good line. Satan comes at us through religion most often, or through politics, or through patriotism, through some ruach, through a feeling-based, emotional something.
By the way, did Yahweh say, "Look, don't touch"?
No, he
did
did not.
That's just exactly how Satan, beguiled Towrah in the garden.
He wants to portray it that way.
I know. He misrepresents what God says.
But who does he send? Who does he send to tell you these lies? Does he sell you? Does he the slick guy down the street that ripped you off on a car deal? No. He sends your grandma.
Or your pastor, or your minister, or your pope, or your
people
priest.
you know and love. That's who he sends.
Or your teacher. That's who he sends. Absolutely.
Right. And that's why it's so beguiling to people until you begin to realize, and I've said it before, hey, there's only one straight game in town. And until you come to realize that everything else is full of clutter. Everything else is just minutia. There's only one straight game in town. Until you come to realize that, and then you come to know Yahweh in his true nature, which is not a religious deity.
Larry, you sell
who would want to be around a religious deity? I mean, really.
You sell engines for cars, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Is it easier to drive a car fast in a straight line, or easier to drive a car on a circuitous route?
Fast in a straight line. I mean, that's
Yahweh's straightforward. It's the only straight game in town.
Yes, he is. That's right.
So Yahweh made it straightforward. You can go as fast to him as your mind will operate.
That's right. And some of us are faster than others. I'm a little slow right now.
Like in my case, I'm especially slow because I get.
I'm really focused.
You were even saying, "Hey, don't wind him up" earlier on something I was about to say about Paul. Larry said, "Kirk, don't encourage."
No, I was talking about how you take 600 pages and you do a rewrite that turns into 1,200 pages. That's what I'm talking about over here.
I'm so fascinated by all this stuff that I'm slow at doing it because there's so much to learn, so much to share, so much to know, so much to understand.
You just try not to leave a stone unturned. Slow wouldn't be so good.
I love turning them over. It's just
good. As long as I can afford the paper to print it.
You can go as fast as you want to go, and it's straightforward, and there are no obstacles whatsoever.
No.
That's why he says it's easy. It's easy.
That's right. But I mean, getting to know Yahweh it's a pleasure. It's the pleasure of our lives. Who wanted to know a religious deity? And by the way, how would you know one?
Yeah.
He might decide to bowl you over like you're a robot, like you're
obedient. The obedient God that you either obey his laws or he's going to punish you. I said, if
God, he might decide to knock you down like you're a bowling pin. You know,
I
mean,
Yahweh
really.
Is as you describe him, I want my soul to die. I don't want to spend eternity with a God who wants us to obey all of his laws. That kind of a God.
My daughter's a biochemist, like your son.
I would rather my soul just cease to exist than spend an eternity in obedience.
Your son's working on his doctorate in biochem, right?
Yeah, just completed and defended it. Yeah.
Okay, so he did he's done. Okay, he did his clinical.
Defended. Not only wrote his dissertation, defended it.
Okay, and he defended it.
Yeah, he's now Dr. Wen. Yeah, he's now Dr. Wen.
Okay, well, Jess is working on being Dr. Jess. She's still in the doctorate program. Interestingly, she was here the other day, and I was talking about Towrah, and I was talking about those 7 years. Yeah, well, I was talking about what the upcoming events are about to be without bringing up Towrah, and she goes, I don't think I want to be one of the chosen. I don't want to go through all that.
Okay.
This is her arrogance now. This is really how arrogant she was. And I said something about the quote, great religions. I said, it doesn't matter to me if it's rabbinic Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. And she goes, talk about it, college indoctrination. She looked at me and she said, we really shouldn't be just attacking Muslims. She looked at me and said that. And I said, Jessica, are you aware that my wife is from Iran?
Right.
I mean, really? Are you aware of that?
Right. Yeah, today Trudeau came out and said, in immigration, we're going to be pro-feminism and pro-Islam. And this idiot said that. I want to be pro-feminism and pro-Islam when Islam is the most anti-feminist doctrine that man has ever conceived. There is nothing in the history of humankind that treats women more poorly than does Islam. Muhammad was a rapist. He was a pedophile. Women have no rights whatsoever in Islam. The Quran demeans women. Muhammad demeaned women. You could never even conceive a doctrine, religious, political, militaristic, that was as demeaning to women as the religion of Islam. And this political buffoon who wants to appear enlightened and compassionate says that we're going to take a different approach than America. Our immigration policies are going to be pro-feminist and pro-Islam. It's just ignorant, stupid.
Brilliant.
And these people think they're smart. I mean, your daughter, I'm sure she thought she was making an enlightened point, and she's completely ignorant.
Well, I mean, talk about the arrogance. Now, wait a minute. She's talking to her dad, who's married to a woman from Iran whose in-laws are all Muslims.
Right.
I mean, what are you going to teach me about them exactly?
Right.
I know hundreds of Muslims. How many do you know, Jessica? The answer is none. This is how they get away with all kinds of things. All these globalist ideas and all.
We have a generation from about 35 down to about 15 that have been indoctrinated to the point where they have no capacity to think.
They're retarded.
They will write
they're retarded.
Stupid. Like this guy, Moody Jeff, he said he's 45.
Mostly.
He's a little older than that. But the guy has lost the ability to think. By the way,
what he just said. It puts me to mind.
Just show you how bad it is.
You remember your old neighbor? You remember your old neighbor, right? Oprah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm watching an Oprah show one day. I just happened to be walking through actually, it was a gas station, and it was on, to be honest with you. And there was these three women on the stage, and they billed themselves as black, militant, lesbian feminists. Okay? Black, militant, lesbian feminists.
Okay,
now,
militant feminists, okay.
Well, they were black militants who were also feminist and lesbian. And so they're on the stage, and you know how they run out and take questions from these airheads? she runs out, and this little white kid, he looks to be about 23 maybe, stands up and she goes, "You have a question?" And he goes, "Yes, I'd like to know how I could help your cause." And my only question at that point is, if a tree fell on his damned head and he was in the middle of the woods, would it make a noise? I mean, I was like, wow.
Okay. Now
they've got these.
Let me speak about Moody Jeff here. Moody Jeff stated that he's angry at God because he made it too difficult to find the truth, and that he stated emphatically that God needs to change the way that he allows people into the afterlife because he was inadequate in his communication. Now,
After all, Jeff tried.
So I would ask you this question: if God made it too difficult, couldn't communicate in a way that was that we could understand to know the truth, and that he did not provide enough information for us to find the truth about how to participate in eternity, then what would make you think that he would be capable of getting us into eternity? Well, isn't making a human soul immortal and perfecting it and empowering it, taking a human from 3D to 7D, isn't that a whole lot harder than explaining, here's who I am and what I'm offering and what I expect from you? So if he can't do the easy part, how in the hell is he going to do the hard part? And why would you call him God if he can't communicate?
I don't know. I think you ought to change Jeff's name maybe to cantankerous or melancholy or something like that. I think he goes well beyond Moody at that point. I mean, really.
No, I'm not calling him Moody because he's emotional. He claimed that he was educated at Moody Bible Institute.
Moody College.
And,
he's a Moodyite.
So he's Moody Jeff because of the movie. I should have told you that. He claims that he is a scholar, mind you. He was trained in all manner of Bible theology.
Mental gymnastics.
Moody, yes. Moody Bible.
Let me ask you a question.
That's why he's Moody.
Let me ask you all a question.
Jeff. Yes.
If you're a Christian and you're reading that New Testament, and it says Jesus spoke in parables, and they asked him why, and he said, in case someone would understand and thereby make it into heaven, and he's talking about religious people. What does that tell you? How do you deal with that, Christian?
Yeah,
no, they can't. By the way, when I was in church, Kirk, that's a good point. I never could figure out. Wait a minute. Everything that this guy is saying is anti-religion, and here I am.
Absolutely. Everywhere he goes, he can't stand religious people.
Right.
I kept thinking this makes no sense. I mean, and of course now I know why.
Well, of course we know now, but I mean, it's just even then it was like I knew as a Christian. I said, this guy don't like religious people.
No, not
clear.
All.
It's very clear.
But he obviously doesn't want everybody to get in, or he wouldn't have talked in parables.
Religion is so stupid, I wrote, so obviously false. Those who accept it without thinking would hate eternity with Yahweh anyway. I mean, this guy would. He doesn't think that Yahweh is an effective communicator. Why would you want to spend an eternity talking with somebody who's an inadequate and unfair communicator? The only way Yah can keep it entertaining for his covenant children is to create an environment where we grow by exploring, learning, and sharing. He created a filter to keep the faithful away from the rational, the irritating away from the respectful. But more than this, and by the way, that's the reason I get angry. I respect Yahweh.
Mm-hmm.
I respect what he has done. I respect what he has done for us. I respect his word.
No. When somebody starts talking about what God is and they have no idea, it always makes us angry, and it should.
Right, it's irritating.
Way.
Right, that's why I use this word, irritating, away from the respectful. I don't worship God. I don't put God on a pedestal, but I absolutely respect him. He has my undivided attention. I respect what he has done. I respect what he has said. I respect what he is offering. I respect the way that he has communicated what he is offering. And I realize.
Well, you've got to admit, we walk around all week with nobody to listen to us. I mean, for real. Go ahead.
But I'm going to tell you,
say that.
I know that he is irritated by this kind of writing. When somebody says things that Moody Jeff does, that's irritating to him just as it's irritating to us. But more than this, why would any rational being want to spend eternity with individuals who never invested the time to know him, who prefer the testimony of liars, who trust religious, political, economic, and military institutions over him, whose attitude towards him is inappropriate? I said, you seem to believe that God should grade on the curve and accept those who are wrong but have at least tried. He wrote, I think that those who have struggled to find God in their own way should be considered for the next life in his family because I don't think we've been given enough information to get it right. End quote. I suspect this is self-serving, but it isn't in Yah's nature. Yah is forgiving of bad, but not of wrong. For example, David was bad, and yet because he was right about Yahweh declared that he was perfect.
Yeah.
Tzedak.
That's a much better plan.
Yeah. Dode is presented in a relationship with God, knowing Yahweh and understanding his Torah from the very beginning. Whatever time he might have invested during his childhood seeking to know Yahweh is seldom mentioned, and thus isn't considered valuable. The seeking to know God is not something that we're told about relative to Dode. His psalms ring of his understanding. They sing of his understanding, not of his seeking. This guy wants to value seeking, but Dode valued understanding. Rather than citing the Torah, Dode explains it. He celebrates its benefits and reveals the nature of the God who wrote it. His every assessment, conclusion, and statement is correct. Yahweh gave us our mortal life, a nefesh soul, and free will, but he also gave humankind a nesalma, a conscience, the ability to reason. It is what gives us the ability to be like God, to know God, to engage in a relationship with him. But like any computer, garbage in, garbage out. You have to consume and digest his word, and then process it rationally, making connections to understand. We were designed to find him, to know him, to understand what he is offering and what he wants in return. Most, however, no longer think rationally. They are no longer judgmental or able to discern between fact and fiction. They operate on faith. They have thereby excluded themselves. Yahweh stated, my people are destroyed by their ignorance. They don't even know where to look. Which is why Yahweh continued by telling Hosea, because you have forgotten my Torah, I will forget your children. Based on these statements and countless others, to be spared, one must know. To know, one must observe Yah's word. Then by using our nesama conscience, we must think about what we have come to know, which in turn leads to understanding. When we understand, we are empowered to make reasonable, rational, and beneficial choices regarding Yah. We have the opportunity to be right. That leads to Yahweh and to his Beireth. It is the way of the Mikre, and both are found in only one place, his Torah. Had God made himself or his plan any more obvious, he would have negated the value of our conscience and of free will. He would have devalued us. The very fact that God makes it a challenge to know him, a challenge to figure all of this out, actually is him telling us, I created you in such a way that I know that you can do this. It's like your child, if you assign them a task that's important to do, and they stumble at it initially. If you say, obviously you don't know how to do it, you're never going to be able to figure it out, let me just do it for you. Or you say, I have confidence that you can do this. And you
want to
give them
know something,
and you encourage them. Which one's better?
You want to know something, Craig? I mean, clearly, knowing that you've taught somebody enough or given them enough that they can find out the truth for themselves is the best way to go. But it was challenging, and it took years of looking and opening my ears. And when I was really ready, guess what? The truth got dropped in my lap by you on a radio show, of all things. And I'm going to tell you, it was so easy to pick up because I was ready to hear it. You know, you go on these, you back then you used to do Christian shows. You'd get on Christian radio. And primarily, though, what they wanted to listen to, from what I could tell, was when you would just tear Islam a new one, which was easy to do. And they would all go, yeah. Except on this show, you went right into, and Christianity's no different. Why do you think they have a church steeple? It was the first thing to kiss the sun and the last thing to kiss the sun. And you know, you went into several things, and I said, wow, everybody's been had. You know, and that made sense to me because of what I had seen in my life. It didn't take much for me to understand that made sense. And I immediately contacted you and started reading the material the next day, actually. And I don't know, I must have had 2,000 printed pages that I was reading, you know, going through everything. And I have to tell you, when you read the truth and you finally see the truth and you read the truth, what I've found with just about everybody in an Unpopular and in the group is that we know it's the truth right away. We do. It just resonates. I mean, it bleeds right out to you.
As in a straight stick among all the crooked sticks. I mean, you just see it. There it is.
You just see it. It's obvious. But your mind has to
That's a good way to put it.
Let me. One of the things that I recall, Larry, and you may not have this recollection, but I do, and it's fairly vivid for me, is that I remember your initial letters to me. And I remember that you'd ask questions, and I would take a considerable amount of time, as I did for this fellow, to answer the questions.
Sure.
And for the most part, the way that you asked your questions, you were straightforward. You didn't cop an attitude like this guy, and I answered you in a very straightforward way, you know. And sometimes you asked questions, though. I said, now, where you are, you should know the answer to this, and I wouldn't answer the question, but I'd point you in the direction of the answer. But I just wouldn't answer the question, thinking that I probably shouldn't give him the answer to this here. He's going to have to go for it. There were times where I was. You could have easily said, "Why is this guy copying playing with me this way? Why doesn't he just give me the answer?" But
no, your thing was, I'm not going to do your. I can't do your thinking for you. Type of thing.
And I also
you have to come to those conclusions by yourself. That type of thing.
Right, I'm not going to rewrite the book
that's
for you.
Right.
And the other thing I told you is, I don't want you sharing any of this with anybody
until you
can share it in your own words. When the translations that I have done are yours, that they're simply the word of Yahweh, and you're citing them as the word of Yahweh, and you don't reference me at all because you understand what God is saying, then go after it.
Right. And I started making notes, and I understood every note I put out there, and I understood why. And
exactly.
And, for the longest time,
because you were doing it speaking, you were letting Yahweh speak for himself.
Right. I mean, that's always the way to do it. You know that.
Right. And you did it boldly.
You even see me do that in emails. I'll go back into a note. The guy says something.
Right.
I'll give him
Yahweh's
words. I mean, if that doesn't put an end to it, then nothing will.
Right. Well, yeah, and so my approach to your emails was, I think, the same approach that Yahweh has with us. I'm not going to spoon feed you. Every answer is there, but, you need to work for it, because if you don't work for it, you're not going to own it. And that was the point I kept on trying to make with you, is I wanted you to own it. Once it's one thing to recognize something is true. It's another to literally incorporate it into the very nature of your being, so that it is just part of the fabric of your life. But the Torah and the covenant and Yahweh's nature are now literally part of the fabric of my life. They are part of the fabric of your life, Larry. And it's at that point that I think that we should engage and share Yahweh's words. But until we reach that point, we really ought not to. We ought to prepare ourselves
first. That's right. I mean, people. Now you do stumble a little bit when you start. People hear the truth, right? And they want to go out and share that truth immediately.
Right.
People are amazed when they first hear the truth.
Right, they are.
And get it. You understand. And then they want to share the truth. And they get in so many quagmires and even it happened to me, too. You get in a quagmire here and there, and you need
somebody had this objection. What's the answer to this objection?
Yeah, and you need a little help.
I think that's why this exercise is so good.
Answer, and that's why going through this letter right here is helpful, because I'm no different than anybody else, other than I've probably spent more time at it, and therefore, we all have our proclivities, or also there's an attribute to our soul that makes us unique, so we're not all bringing the same thing to.
Well, your strengths are just in really just rational debate.
Right, understanding. Right.
Yeah.
So most of the time when you say,
this
is the argument that they put out against me, how do I refute this? How do I answer this? What's the rebuttal to that? Most of the time I'm going to know. And I don't know because my knowledge is greater. I just know because I have now an understanding with who Yahweh is and what He's offering. And once, writing Prophet of Doom was an extraordinarily empowering experience, as was being a Christian. Because it's just the same reason that Yahweh chose Moshe to go into Egypt. If you understand what God isn't and how Satan presents himself in the religions of Christianity and Islam as the Lord, the pieces fall into place. You have the right.
Now here's the upside to what a lot has happened, over the years on FB. I went from being called a winbot to which is fine. I didn't care. Call me whatever you want. I don't care.
Yeah, it bothered me, but it didn't bother you.
Right, but whatever. Yeah, I'm passing on material that you had written. It doesn't matter. It's it's Yahweh's words that matter. It's not what Craig thinks. It's not what I think.
You and I would always talk and say, okay, since you're using my translations, the only reason you're using them is that there isn't anybody out there that's made an effort to improve on them.
My whole goal was to make it.
It would be great if they were. I'm not holding mine out to be perfect. I'm just saying
that
nobody
was
else
your
is
thing.
making an effort to do the same thing.
On a mass scale, no, there isn't. And so, but it went from being called a wimbot to being hated, and to be honest now, feared. They're afraid to debate at me.
Yeah.
It's just
that's what we thought about.
Because it's embarrassing.
And we would all of a sudden get all sorts of people that would want to, Christians that want to debate. Like this fellow, here he has all of his Bible training and Bible theology from the Moody Bible Institute, and he presents himself using these scholastic terms. And here I go through. We're on page 6 of an 18-page response. And when he writes his I really appreciate what you wrote letter to me. That's not what he said. When he gave me the one finger salute and called me the derogatory term. You know how many arguments he brought up against what I had say? Was there?
I'm going to guess
final letter
that were
none. Yeah. Didn't even make an attempt to refute anything I'd say. And so that's
right.
I realized the same thing is that once you come to know who Yahweh is and you can speak boldly and confidently about who He is and what He's offering, then there is nobody. I don't care what they know. I don't care how smart they are. I don't care how skilled they are. There is no one who can debate you. It's like I'm sure there's lots of people that know the Quran better than I do. No one understands it better than I do. There's probably people that know more about Muhammad than I do. Nobody understands Muhammad better than I do. There is no way for a Muslim to win a debate with me on Islam. It's impossible. It's impossible for a Christian to win a debate with me on Paul. I know him. And I understand him. Understanding is a very powerful tool. So when you went to understanding, Larry, those who would advance religion are now afraid of you. They can't debate you because what you end up having to do is you have to contradict God to oppose us. Not because
well,
we're God.
you know, and that's how it always ended.
We were
you know, here are Yahweh's words. You know, you understand when you're in a debate and they say something, Yahweh's always got words that totally contradict them. And you put them right and you say, okay, now here's Yahweh's words. This is what you just said. Who should I believe? And that's when they run.
The Torah is complete, lacking nothing. This guy said, that God did not provide enough information to get it right. So that's his position. God's position
God's a liar.
My Torah is complete,
God's
lacking
a liar
nothing,
in his
and
world.
therefore can restore the soul. Who would you trust there? Those positions are the opposite of one another. So if you don't think that he provided enough information, whose fault is that? If you don't know enough to make the right choice, whose fault is that?
Yeah. You can't. You don't listen. You don't want to listen. You want to spend all your time in some kind of an argument or a debate.
I still believe the truth is out there.
The truth is out there. It sounds like the X-Files.
A needle in a haystack, you'll write later, and then I found that it was in a different haystack. No.
You know, when we're presenting these truths
Torah
to people, I mean, I know, and we're presenting these truths. You know, the real truth is it's going to get down to they're going to face judgment. We're not. You know, that's a very comforting thought to me that I don't have to stick up for everything I've ever done in my life, which couldn't be stuck up for, to be honest with you, and I don't think anybody else can either if they're honest. You know, so you know the bottom line is that I don't get judged, but one day including my daughter Jessica, is going to sit there and she chose not to be one of the chosen, and that's fine. That's a choice, Jess.
That's your choice. Yeah.
That's a choice you make.
I am glad that Dode was the example of how to observe the Torah. Because I measure up just fine compared to Dode in terms of behavior.
Yeah, I gave a lot of us a break there.
Right, yeah, cut us a heck of a break. So I know that if I were judged, I'd be failing.
Now when you misspeak, though, Craig, remember that he chose Moshe, who mumbled.
Oh, I know.
So when he attacks you about your inability to speak properly, well, take it up with Moses.
Yeah, I mispronounced two words. And the only reason I happen to love that story of Moshe because he chose a man who spoke poorly to introduce his name to the Torah. So he's
you've gone over that.
We don't
There's
say
three
his name
real
clearly,
giant points to be made in one. Dode, he picked a guy with that was challenged on a morality scale, and then two, he picks the spokesman's got a thick tongue, and then three, he picks a guy to have the first child of the covenant, and he's 100 years old. I mean, what are the odds?
Yeah.
Obviously there's points being made.
He's obviously showing off.
He is showing.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
That's true.
But
the
guy that
I'm just saying there are points.
The Torah was a scallywag. The guy who introduced how to pronounce his name and what his name was important.
That's a nice way
had
of
a
putting it.
speech impediment. And the guy who told us how to conceive a child in the covenant was 100 years old with a 90-year-old wife.
90-year-old wife, yeah. And you sit there, and you start looking at it from that perspective because that's clearly Yahweh's perspective. And so we got to look at it from that perspective and say, well, I don't have to be the best speaker. I don't have to be the most moral.
No.
I don't have to be the most perfect. I don't have to do anything. And that's the real answer to it.
Why? Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we are. It matters what we come to understand, what we come to respect, what we come to accept. It's Yahweh that matters, and our willingness to know, understand, and accept and act upon what He had to say. That's why Dode was called right. Yeah.
Yes, Sadak, and that's we make a lot of small points over the years, that are really huge. Like, would you rather be kind or good, or nice, or would you rather just be right? Well,
I want to be nice.
I want to be right. I want to be like Dode. I mean, Yahweh said Dode was right, and Dode is so right that Yahweh not only said He loves him, but He's going to model His
Shabbat
millennial kingdom.
And it's an important point because Sadak is the word that means righteous, and righteous is just based on being right. It's not based on being giving, loving, caring, or any of these things.
Just right.
You know.
Just right.
You know, now, do I care about some things? Yeah. Am I the most caring guy in the world? Probably not. Am I the most giving guy in the world? I'm fairly giving, as opposed to, say, some bureaucrat that reaches in somebody else's wallet and gives something to somebody and goes, look what I've done for you. I've at least reached in my own wallet. But am I the most giving? No, I'm not a born philanthropist. I have my own self-interest at heart sometime, especially when I'm doing business.
You're giving Yahweh's testimony.
Well, yeah, I'm doing that. You know.
All right. What's more valuable?
Well, the latter of the two, of course.
Right, of course, of course. Yep. We will. We're going to return to this next week. We're only on page 8 of 18, and it actually gets far juicier as we get.
Well, good. I'm glad we're going over this because people need to hear it. There's some real strong points in there. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It's the way it is.
Let me just conclude with a couple of paragraphs.
Don't run ahead.
That gets us past that last point, and then we'll begin on a fresh point when we start next week. And this was that in hindsight, and now that I've rid my mind of Pauline deceptions, I no longer see the path to Yahweh as difficult. I've studied His words in Hebrew, and I've come to understand what He's making. It all makes sense. It is all accurate. There are no contradictions. There are no invalid statements. Yahweh is straightforward and unchanging. He is an entertaining, effective, and brilliant communicator. Everything He conveys provides insights on multiple levels. It was my prior religion and politics that led me astray, that obscured my vision. The only real challenge was clearing my mind of the religious lies so that I can embrace the truth. That is what Yahweh intended. That is the reason knowing Him is challenging. That is the reason as few as 1 in a million people come to know Him.
Well said.
Yeah. It's on this side of the equation, one of the challenges I think we all have, it's so obvious, it's so clear, it's so simple, it's so beautiful, that now when we're confronted by somebody that is lost in the lies of religion, you do lose a little bit of your patience. You know, it's always said, I suffer fools poorly. Once you come to understand how clear it is, how magnificent it is when somebody speaks ill of Yah's testimony, we don't suffer the fools very well anymore. But, you know, Yahweh doesn't either.
That's good.
I mean, we're going to do several programs on Yirmiyah 23, where Yahweh just lambasts the religious establishment. And what's interesting is he is, for an entire chapter of Yirmiyah, just announcing everything that the religious establishment does to mislead his people. He only mentions one thing specifically that is central to their plan to confuse and mislead. You know what that one thing is?
No.
What is it?
The removal of his name from his testimony in association with
that would be our, yes.
That was the one thing
can
that
I
he named.
Quickly read? I want to read one passage here, just for, and this is for the new folks.
Sure.
And this is in what they affectionately call the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments. This is a statement right before those. But I will genuinely act and actually engage to literally prepare, perform, and produce unmerited and unfailing mercy, unearned favor, undeserved kindness on behalf of Aleph, that's thousands, who move towards me and love me, who approach me by closely observing and carefully considering my terms and conditions. That says it all. Billions of people have walked
that's
the
the conclusion of the second of the three statements that he wrote on the first tablet.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but it's like a preamble because they're really in the Ten Commandments.
That is the conclusion to the second of three statements on the first of the two tablets, which you just read.
Yeah, that's right. The three broad sweeping statements.
The first statement says that I am your liberator. Rather than enslaving you, I liberated you from slavery, and you will not exist with any other gods in my presence. He introduced himself by name. I am Yahweh. I am your liberator. I am here to provide you with freedom, and you will not exist with other gods in my. Right. Yeah. Now the second, so that means he is the one and only God. His name is Yahweh, and his entire mission is to liberate us. By the way, can you liberate somebody if you're a lord? Can you liberate somebody if you tell them you must obey them? Yeah, if you must obey them? No. So he presents himself as a liberator. And the second thing that he says, that he etched in stone, is do not be religious. I don't want you to be around, to be associated with, in any way, shape, or form, religion. And fathers corrupt their children to the third and fourth generation by being religious. Don't do that. Then the line that you just read, that is the conclusion of the second statement that he etched in stone.
That's second. There's three statements, and then he goes into 7 instructions. I mean, it's what they call 10 commandments is really three broad sweeping statements, and then 7 instructions.
Right.
I mean, that's
and the
what
3 statements are on the first of the 2 tablets, and the 7.
And then they're comprised of 77 words. Those 7 instructions.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And the third one says the unforgivable sin is I will not forgive anyone who demeans, devalues my name. If you demean or devalue my name, or you associate or lift up or promote anyone who demeans or devalues my name,
or uses my name or reputation to promote deception.
Right.
What he called Shoah, which is Shah, which is what the rabbinical system is called today.
Yeah, for vowel pointing. Exactly.
I'm blown away. That blew me away when you told me that. I would have looked it up. I was just sitting there going, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? They named it corruption and deceit.
I know. I didn't, by the way, realize that until I was dealing with the only time that the basis for Masoret is used in the prophets. And as I was looking up the basis for Masoret, the article I read talked about their greatest contribution was this Shabbat system for pronouncing words. I said, wait a minute, I've seen that. And I looked at the spelling. I said, I know that word.
Yeah,
that's the word
Shoah.
The third statement.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. And what
I know. Wow, talk about give it up, guys.
To demean, to falsify. And I was going to say, oh my goodness, they didn't do that, did they?
They did.
They did.
No, it struck me. You told me that on a show some time ago. I said, "Are you kidding me?" You know, you go, "No, really. That's what they call it." I went and looked it up. It's Shava. Yeah, I'm sitting there going, "No."
Oh my goodness! So in your face.
And that's how Halal Ben Shakar works, isn't it?
That's the way it works.
I mean, you look at these cities; they're named after these goddesses. They're named after temples. They're named after
you take
despicable
the
things.
Most effective spokespeople in the history of humanity for Halal Ben Shakar, for Satan, Paul and Muhammad, and he tells both of his apostles, both of his messengers, openly tell in their testimony that they're demon-possessed.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
they say
Muhammad says that all of Allah's witnesses are demon-possessed, and they speak for Satan. And Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians that that goad that controls me in my side is a messenger from Satan, a demon, a malach from
Satan. That goad, it means what? Sin. I mean, it was always representative of sin.
Right.
It's
the
just
scorpion stinger.
Astounding.
Yeah, it's a little stinger for the cattle.
It's right in your face. I'm going to tell you that, these 2 guys are demon-possessed, and you are so blankety-blank stupid, you can't figure it out. I'm inclined to reject Paul. I'm inclined, but I wouldn't use your arguments. He says I'm demon-possessed. I'm inclined. Yahweh calls him the plague of death. I'm inclined. Yeah. Once I read Chabahook and he said, Shaul is the plague of death, and they made it really clear because they referred to him masculine singular, and then said his soul, speaking of now a human being, so you can't mistake it. Shaul, a human being, that he said is going to come and he said, at the time that I'm fulfilling my moed, and he wrote this exactly 666 years before Paul would write his first letter to the Galatians, and he says, that soul named Shaul is the plague of death. At that point,
and of course, Mr. Moody wouldn't consider such a thing because he couldn't stop. He couldn't stop and get outside of his own brain long enough. You know this is the problem. To really consider Yahweh's word.
Well, he doesn't like God. What we're going to get to is that the thing that really turned me off on him, because at this point I'm not upset with him. He hasn't said. I mean, he's tried to needle me, but I know I don't needle very easily. But he ultimately writes that surely you cannot justify the pagan, ritualistic, and religious nature of that Levitical stuff. And that Levitical stuff is the same as all of the other pagan cultures that were around.
Like eating lamb on Passover.
Yahowah's Torah, Leviticus, Kara is the heart of the Torah. If you're going to demean Yahowah's Torah, you and I are not going to get along.
Since he doesn't understand, he doesn't understand the Moed Mikre. I mean, he doesn't understand them.
Understand that
they're there for the purposes of symbolism. They're not there for the purposes of worship. Right. And they're a party. They're all a party. Who doesn't like a party? I mean, I'm not understanding.
And the animal sacrifices are for food. We're eating them.
Yeah, right.
Sacrifice for food.
Well, it's kind of mind-blowing, but that's the main thing. They have to get outside their own thinking, their belief system, their faith in the unknown, and get into reality. It must be
because we're so far from the farm that they don't remember that you slaughter an animal to eat the food.
That's right.
I mean, it comes packaged at McDonald's. I guess that's all they know.
Yeah, I know.
I had a little smoked chicken today. I went to my favorite smokehouse restaurant and had some brisket sandwich. Brisket is, the really tough meat in the cow that has to be smoked to tenderize it, and it's spectacular. And I took home a chicken breast with a wing attached to it, and it was really yummy. And it did not bother me that cow and that chicken had to both be slaughtered for me to dine on that meat. But that meat was really tasty, and I just realized that they were raised for us to eat, and yes, they have to be killed and then cooked for us to eat them. Yeah. It didn't bother me at all.
Well, I'm astonished by this guy, and I'm going to enjoy the rest of that letter because I enjoyed your answer to him because it was all very...
Well, the thing that was so good about it, Larry, that I thought, and just my 2 cents, but is that he took the time to, we'll talk to you like you're not here, he took the time to address each thing separately, so it's really broken down, I thought, for anyone who has family or has friends, and they're not always sure how to deal whether in writing or in person, how to deal with these conflicts to these people, and just say, well, look, this is it. And it was just, I thought it was wonderful. I mean, it was just...
Well, I mean,
like,
but that's
example,
why we do these answers.
Stuff, all that Levitical stuff. On Levitical
you
stuff.
Get, all of those you get all the time.
Right.
You hear them all the time.
The specifics on the sacrifices, and I used research from observations there. But the big picture is, how do you respond to somebody that says, that Leviticus stuff is pagan and religious and ritualistic? And you say, wait a minute, just back up for a moment. The God who authored it proved that he authored it based upon prophecy, past, present, and future. His creation account, his story of the flood, his story of all of the things surrounding Abraham and Joseph and Moshe and the Exodus, and every bit of it
and 6 days
proven to be accurate, and then he has prophecies going on even to days past our own, which are being fulfilled before he proved,
like Damascus being destroyed there.
Right. Right, and Syria falling. And so here he has proven that he's authored it. So what you want to say is that God's testimony is pagan and religious and was simply a copy of other pagan religious communities. At that point, why would you even be interested? Now, if you're a Christian, you're screwed because that's part of your Bible.
Yeah.
If you're a Muslim, you're screwed because you say that your Quran confirms the Torah. And you've just said that that God is no more credible than any of the other false gods of ancient civilizations.
Well, let me tell you what, a Christian is screwed. The Christian is screwed because so many churches I've been in, it has, or they preached on it, where it says, "Forever, O Lord," instead of Yahweh, "thy word is settled in heaven." And that is, quote, unquote, Old Testament. Now, how do you deal with that? If you said, this is it, how do you deal with it?
How do you deal with it?
How do you deal with Abraham's promise when he says, it's settled? I've said it, I've promised it, it's good.
Right.
And then they run around saying, I'm going to believe in all these other promises, I can trust him. Well,
I mean,
it just
there wasn't a single church that I went to where I didn't have people. God's the same today as he was yesterday, as he will be tomorrow, or whatever.
Right.
I believe it's in the perfect, what am I trying to say?
Right. You're just not,
in the perfect
conjugation. Because their conclusions are irrational.
Yeah.
Like, why would you seek a God whose testimony was pagan?
He changes his mind.
Well, you want to know what they're into there. They're into a rigorous dilemma, they call that. A rigorous dilemma. Really, it's a choice between two equally distasteful alternatives. You cannot win. I mean, if you're going to take the position
and why would you want to spend eternity with this God? Yeah, why would you want this God to cut you a break because you made some
capricious
effort to
God,
search?
you mean?
Yeah. Why would you want to spend eternity with him if his testimony is pagan and ritualistic and no different than the savage cultures that surrounded them? That God's no different than the Bel and Baal and Zeus and
for every Baal there's a Bel. That's what I've found, and I got to tell you, I think that. But that's the whole shtick with Ha-Satan, isn't it? He wants to make it look. How many times have people told you the God of the Old Testament's the same as the God of the Quran? And then you go and you actually factually look at it, and you have a breakdown on it somewhere.
Yeah,
I did a note on it.
In fact, we got David Rohl wrote that in his assessment of Paleo-Hebrew. David Rohl came to recognize that Yosef, there's an inscription in Paleo-Hebrew attributed to the time that Yosef was in Egypt. It's written in Paleo-Hebrew. There's no question about it's Paleo-Hebrew. There's no question about it that it's wholly different than the Egyptian hieroglyphics. In Egyptian hieroglyphics, you have to have many thousands of characters to communicate the thoughts in the writing. Paleo-Hebrew is the first written language where there is an alphabet. Now, cuneiform may have preceded it, but it's not an alphabet. There are thousands upon thousands of character combinations that are necessary to communicate thoughts.
Right. Cuneiform is just a way of pronouncing words. It's not an alphabet.
It's not a way of pronouncing words. It's a way of conveying numbers and ideas, not of pronouncing words.
Right. Well,
hieroglyphics is a combination of ideas that are conveyed by pictures and with some words being pronounced, but both of them require many thousands of characters. Hebrew is the first alphabet. Now, and there's hundreds of alphabets of man. First alphabet where there was a modicum of letters. As a matter of fact, only 22 of them. 22. And so he was the one. He found out that yes, there is this inscription. It's clearly Paleo-Hebrew, and it dates to the time of Yosef. And there's found in mines in the Sinai that were worked by Yehudim, Israelites. Same alphabet. Also around 1700 BCE. Do you know when the oldest example of the Phoenician alphabet is? About 900 BCE. In other words, the Hebrew alphabet, and by the way, the Phoenician alphabet is the Hebrew alphabet.
Yeah,
but
it is. I've seen it.
The scholars want to give the Phoenicians credit for the first alphabet when there's proof that that alphabet existed among the Israelites 600 years previously and 600 years before the Phoenicians were even a culture.
That's a good trick if you can pull that.
Yeah, that's a little hard to do. And why they want to do that is anybody's guess, you know.
I thought they wanted
to
see God.
The reason they want to do that is because scholars do not want to give any credibility to Yahweh or to his Torah. That's because they've taken the approach that Moshe didn't write the Torah. They've come to the conclusion that there were 4 people that wrote the Torah around 400 or 500 BCE because there was no Hebrew alphabet to write it. And yet the Hebrew alphabet exists now. We have proof of it going back to 1600 BCE, almost 1700 BCE. And, of course, all you'd have to do is you read the Torah and its depictions of creation and ancient history and all the names of these characters is such that if it were written in cuneiform, rather than setting it beside the Ark of the Covenant, they would need a convoy of tractor trailers to carry the clay tablets to have communicated the Torah. We wouldn't be
that's
scrolls. It would be mountains of these tablets, and the Egyptians, they didn't write their hieroglyphics on parchment or papyrus. They wrote them. They chiseled them into the stones of their monuments. And so if it's written in either one of those 2 languages, you could not have had Moshe provide the Torah or carry it down to read it to the people, because he would have needed a whole fleet of tractor trailers to carry it. And it's so obvious that it was written with an alphabet.
It's just crazy what they, you know, they jump through a lot of hoops to try to overlook what's obvious, you know. Really.
They do.
I've known people that were such manipulators that they did everything they could, and I think we've probably all known people like this in our lives, that they do everything possible to manipulate to get out of work. And if they put the same effort into the work that they put into manipulating to get out of the work, hey, they could have been something, you know, really.
You know, it's interesting, too, that you mentioned work. That's the thing that Moody Jeff really doesn't want to do. It takes work to observe so that you know, and to think so that you understand, and then to respond in such a way that you act and engage in the covenant. All of that is work. But the difference is that Yahweh looks at work positively, as does everyone in the covenant.
Yeah.
Work is a privilege. Work has value. Work has merit. Work builds character. Yeah, work is satisfying.
Covenant people are thinking people, and they're always
also
digging.
Working people.
I mean, I've found
they're always
they
working
are.
people.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Constantly.
You know, so I look at the covenant people as the best people to be around. Matter of fact, we have Dee and John and her kids coming over Sunday. We're going to have they're going to come over this weekend. I'm going to make chili and some cheddar biscuits or something like that. Just have a laid back time over here.
Yeah, good.
Don't hurt your hips now.
Don't hurt your hips.
Well, I say I. Actually, I'm not the one.
Once you're bone on those hips, my friend, you really need to take care of them. Lisa tells me that she's good with the Mediterranean food, and so go with that.
I don't like Mediterranean food.
Oh, well, there you go.
But she can make anything. She can. She'll probably.
She's a smart girl. But anyway, get those hips taken care of.
Yeah, well, I have to. I don't have any, question about it. I have to wait till Yalda gets back so I can do it. But I'm going to probably plan on getting it done next month. And believe me, I can do without the pain. And it's my understanding you get back to walking, you can even work out, you can, live a regular normal life.
There's a few things that you can't do. You're going to be asked to minimize climbing up and down stairs, and you're going to minimize twisting and crossing your legs and hips in certain ways, but and for the first month to 6 months, you're gonna undergo a couple of hours of physical therapy every day. I mean, I went to physical therapy when I blew my knees out, and actually came to really enjoy it, and it really made a huge difference. But you're going to be engaged. You're going to be bedridden for a week, and then you're going to be engaged in physical therapy for several months. You like doing things that are, and physical therapy is a light form of working out, of a very specific, directed way. And then they're going to tell you there are certain things. I don't have a problem with that. There's certain things they're not going to want you to do that put unique strain on your hips, because while there's no pain there, Yahowah's means of attaching cartilage and ligaments and muscles and all that sort of thing to keep our joints attached and in their socket is superior to whatever they're going to be doing. That design is superior to what man can do. So while the hip socket works beautifully and there's less friction and you'll be immediately out of pain, you just don't want to over-rotate. So there's a few things that you'll change so that you don't over-rotate. But the 85% of them last for 20 years, and you only need 10 years out of it. So you're in great shape. Yeah, I'm in good. Yeah, I'm good that way. In good shape. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're about to be cut off because the program automatically cuts off here in about 60 seconds. So. Well, it was nice being on the show again. Yeah, it's great to have you back. Great to have you back, Larry. Yeah, we have a good time. Hear from you, Larry. I tell you what, though, I've always said about you. I've always said about Craig, and Kirk says it too when we're at our Mensa meeting. If it wasn't for double standards, Craig, you'd have no standards at all. That's right. That's right. What? All right, gentlemen. Bye, shalom. I enjoyed it. Right, we'll see you, man. Bye. Bye.